Okay, welcome everyone to the weekly Cartographer office hours meeting. Really glad to have you here. Welcome all. Let me share my screen real quick. And feel free to add yourself to the attendees list. Sharing again the link for folks who just joined. All right, so remember the goal of this space mainly to discuss ideas that could improve the project in the form of RFCs. So we have the project board. We're trying out the beta GitHub's projects, in this case for RFCs. So we will start by discussing briefly RFC 756, introduce Kubernetes events, which is blocked on DOC. Is there anyone from DOC here yet? No. So we should start by another one, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll wait if someone from the DOC joins. Next up, it's 705, simplify runnable usage, which has been labeled as blocked. This, there's a lot of discussion here, but seems like it's blocked until we tackle 787.
Yeah, so just a heads up. So, oh, go ahead, Wishman.
No, well,
you go. Sorry.
Yeah, so I wrote this, and then there was Scott raised an objection. I saw those as separable issues, and that's why I opened 787. And I've heard Stephen say that like I've talked to Stephen, and he said, well, I want to resolve 787 before approving 705. I think separately, I think 787 is doable. It actually complicates things even more, at least in the short term, because we would have to support two competing ways of doing things just within Runnable. Forget like using a flag, which has made and also I think that there is just a user design, like a UX question, where some folks think like, oh, the current runnable structure where you have a workload and then you have a runnable and then you have all these runs is good for users. And another camp that says, if I create a template and I just put this flag on it to say it's immutable, and then suddenly I see this new object runnable that's created, that's confusing to me, and it would be simpler not to have that. And one thing that I was thinking was we could actually try that out and just have the default for the flag be no runnable, and we soak that runnable behavior up into the workload behavior, and we leave runnable as it is for those people who do want that runnable object. So we both simplify things, and we leave like this other experience, and then we could like gather user feedback. The other option is just to get some users and put some designs in front of them and ask what they think. I expect I'm expecting that Rash might be happy about my proposal to soak the runnable behavior up into the workload. There's something that the engineering team has proposed for a while, and I wonder if having both at the same time, maybe like not trying to deprecate runnable, just having both could be kill two birds with one stone.
It doesn't bother me to keep the runnable controller at this point. It just means that the implementation of a life cycle could be so much simpler. That's assuming it can be simpler. I'm hoping it can be as simple as we originally suggested, with just setting a life cycle and it just behaving like it's needed to for all of the, there's new RFCs that have come since then, and I'm not sure if any of those things cause any sort of impedance mismatch, like the status one, for example, the health. We've got a health RFC. I'm not sure if that can now conflicts in any way. But assuming it doesn't, I think it'd be the more pleasant experience for the user and make more sense to the user too. They get what they ask for rather than this extra thing that implements what they're asking for. My argument is that the object graph is part of the user experience of Cartographer. Right? You're using Cartographer and you define a supply chain. You have a bunch of resources. They generally map to one object resource object, and you expect to see that there. And then from there to be able to debug those in their own world, essentially. And so that seems cleaner, that we create the thing that we say we're going to create in the template.
Oh, what I was going to bring up is that I've put those two RFCs in the doc, mostly because of this state change. So I applied labels blocked, pointing like the other RFC to this points to another one. That's just because if we go with the implementation of them in that order, for instance, the add template field for runnable, I think this one is blocked on the ability for you to essentially do selection at a higher level than runnable. Because if we get that one in, then like it simplifies this. If this gets in, then it simplifies the other FC. I forgot the name and the number. But the overarching, like, oh, let's simplify runnable. That was more of a heads up.
I know that there is a request for RFC on adding selector to supply chain templates, which I'm all for. We've had users ask for it. Is that one? Is there an RFC that has met that request for an RFC yet?
I think not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I see Josh.
No, it's still
do
sitting there.
we anticipate that RFC also proposing that we deprecate selector in runnable?
You wouldn't have to.
Well,
but it seems like if we want to encourage a preferred workflow, then it probably makes sense to deprecate the selector runnable.
Yeah, I think it doesn't, for some use cases, it doesn't have to, but in order to yeah, the reason we need selector in the supply chain templates is if we have selector in the runnable object and then we start templating and we refer to things, it's unclear in the inline template. I don't know. Yeah, it's complicated, which is part of why I'm like, maybe we just leave runnable as it is, and then we put the lifecycle flag on the lifecycle enum, just have things behave as folks would expect.
I feel like we've had this conversation in this meeting before, right? It's like by just adding that flag, then like if we just take the simplifying runnable RFC as it's written right now, right? Then
That's not what I'm proposing.
Oh, sorry.
To be clear,
Okay.
that's what I was trying to preview. That like, I would like to take a different approach and say like the RFC as it is saying what if we stamp out a runnable? Saying like let's not do that. Let's have the workload controller stamp out those Tecton task runs, and in the status make sure that it's reporting like the proper task run object, and just not have a runnable created at all.
Cool. That sounds like a whole different RFC to me, right?
Or are we working a 705 if no one thinks that 705 should go ahead as it stands? You know, the intent is to change the user experience, right? In that RFC. I don't know how we want to track it historically. We can create a new one, or we could just modify that.
I think I'll create a new one, because if folks are like, no, we hate this, then you can just be like, all right.
That's fair. That's
back to the
fair.
original one.
Yeah, it's entirely fair.
We have Scott now. Should we talk about the events RFC?
Mm-hmm. It's blocked. I think both things were addressed. I think
we have Scott.
We have Scott's picture.
Hello.
Is a good picture.
Hello.
Hey, Scott, welcome.
So I thought I approved it this morning.
Oh, yeah, you might have done.
I added a few more comments, all of which are relatively minor.
Okay. But, all right. Thank you. Yep. We applied this, and then that was maybe a few days ago now. Putting it on the agenda. I didn't actually think you'd be back yet, so.
Back today.
Great. I'll review whatever you've put in there and move it forward.
Yeah, it's nothing earth-shattering.
Can I also get some more reviews from our own team, please? I think we're not quite at saturation.
Yeah, it seems like need more reviews before consider it accepted, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I'll ping everyone privately anyway. That's great.
Sure. Thank you. All right.
I guess one last thing I'll say about Kate's events is, I think one change, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, that was basically suggested that we say that the events in the RFC are examples rather than a finite set of we will have exactly these events. So expectation on my part is that these things will evolve once we actually implement them and see them in the wild, and like we shouldn't have to go through an RFC process again to like make changes. As long as it's like spiritually aligned, we can just do it.
Yeah, I put them in there just to get spiritual alignment. That's what I was hoping for, right? As to say, which ones of these do you all think is really ridiculous? Which ones of these do you think is going to actually help users?
I don't necessarily object to that. I am curious. I think we have alignment that when we make changes to the status, that does require an RFC. I'm wondering if we think of the event submitted as less of the API, the user API, than the status.
So I think the bar in my mind is whether other people are depending on the content and the shape of the resource to create their own patterns, UIs, tools, what have you. So like for the content of the status, like I think that's a place where we absolutely expect people and tools to like care deeply about the structure.
Mhm.
Like tools will look for certain flags, certain conditions, and make decisions based off of that in terms of what they display or how they interpret the health of that resource. Events are more informational, more debugging oriented, rather than something that you would necessarily like say, I want to look for exactly this pattern and then take some action because of that. It's not to say that you won't.
Yeah.
Like you might write something that alerts, like if a certain event fires more times over a certain period. So if it like triggers some threshold, you might then like page somebody. So like we should be careful about changing the reasons arbitrarily, but like specifically like the messages, like those are like free form, those are human readable. We can change them whenever we need to, just because something reads better. So like it's definitely something we should document and we should be conscious of, but I don't think the standard is as high.
Yeah, I do know that some users are intending on consuming this information as a way to provide status about, excessive thrashing, that kind of thing, things that can't be observed looking at a status, basically high numbers on events over a short, I mean, histographically, right? So mostly when they attach tooling that can pick up, it's a neologism, but histographic works for me. Histogrammically is probably the right term here, but if you attach some kind of monitoring tool that then alerts you on a high number of events, particular events, especially in these, you'd want those to be fairly reliable, because you're probably setting up your operations around those sorts of behaviors.
Any other comment around this RFC? Okay, yeah, remember to go there and provide your review so we're able to move it in the process. Okay, next thing will be, according to the board, to fully comment on the RFCs in the FCP stage. Will that be a good approach? Because I see this one, oh, sorry, I wasn't hearing. I see this RFC, well, according to the board, is the final comment period stage. So wondering if there is any additional comment. It has an approval by Scott already. Probably needs an additional review by Stephen. Yeah, but it's been at that stage for 2 weeks now.
I think it's ready to go and to approved.
Maybe I think it's ready to make it approved. No objection?
If so, you're too late.
Yay.
One meta question, does approved mean merged? Or
No.
is merging it separate?
That's the triggers would then go on and merge it and update it and give it a number and that sort of stuff, right? So, yeah. I have a comment that it's good where it is and accepted. It's not completed because it's not implemented. I was trying to introduce maybe a discussion around this in this meeting, and then I decided decided I think we all know that it's a little hard to understand what the statuses are and to make sure that RFCs move to where they are and communicate broadly what the RFC status is. I just wanted to pick up some more work to actually go and improve on that a bit. Hopefully in copying what someone else is doing somewhere. It feels like it's still all very manual, and this, like, just before this meeting, me and David got together and just made sure that the priorities matched what we'd seen in the RFC board. And we're also a little confused because the RFC board looks a little out of date. And I noticed that when I merged one this week, I forgot to give it a new number because it's that easy because there's no automation around it. So these are things I'd like to tackle at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement there.
If anyone's got
yeah,
any suggestions of a team that they've seen do it really well, please let me know. And I'll go copy whatever they've done. I don't need, no not built here problems here.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Raj, for bringing that up. Okay, we have several RFCs in the pending state. Yeah, we've seen some differences between the beta board and the let's say the old board we were using. But the goal is to keep iterating on whatever works best. So we see some RFCs here pending. We would like to discuss some of them, at least the common blueprint and multi-path. No?
Some of these have been left in pending just for the sake of, I mean, they're actually drafts, a lot of these. Multipath is supposed to be a draft. I don't know if it's not. I think that's why it's, I don't know if that's why it's green, but it should be a draft.
Okay.
Yeah, pending really doesn't. I mean, we will move them into, we'll move them into, sorry, I have to look at the board myself to just remember the order of these things. Yeah, those pendings are entirely different to the other board. We've got to work out why the two boards are completely out of sync with each other. We've got add template field for runnable and pending and introduce multipath, which no, is a draft, is now gone back to a draft because we understand why it's not valid, but we didn't want to lose the, branch to nowhere. So I'll change that to a draft now. I will also try to work out why our two boards are completely out of sync. It was created by Marty and Emily, and neither of them are here to help us today. So
yeah, that's strange. So
work it out.
Thank you.
We have Rob here. Rob, is there anything you want to chat about with the Maven stuff?
Just haven't been any changes to the RFC itself, I think, for at least for over a week. From what I remember, the last decision was no changes to the workload for now. For this release, the changes for the parameterization for the Maven repository will be provided via the params, at least for the first release, until we get some feedback, and then we can revisit the workload and update it accordingly. Also, it's my understanding that the Cartographer team is waiting for proof of concept of the Maven repository, like running in a supply chain. And we're working on that now. we're updating the VMware source controller code to handle the Maven repositories. And that'll probably take a couple more weeks.
Cool. So it's expected that this RFC will sit in draft for a while then, I guess.
Yeah, until at least until the POC is running. And we can see like what the supply chain looks like when it's going.
Cool, makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Yeah, next up is the proposal from Raj. Is there any objection of moving a multi-path proposal to decline?
I'm going to put a little description on it just to say that we're declining it because it makes it too simple for supply chains to start looking like concourse pipelines, which defeats the purpose of a choreographer that depends on well-designed resources. So that's what I was going to put in there as I decline it.
You're right. Looks like no objections in that regard.
Groovy.
Okay, cool. All right. Next up was the discussion topic on using HackMD instead of Google Docs for this particular meeting notes. And that's a really good point because the original idea, at least my idea with using Google Docs was to make it accessible even for folks who are not familiar with Markdown. But right now it's becoming hard to maintain. I mean, Google Docs, because, you know, lack of automation, integration. Yeah, there's this proposal of migrating meeting notes to HackMD. So what are your thoughts on this?
Can you talk more about what sort of integration someone has wanted to have? That, yeah, what sort of integration are folks looking for?
My first one is I'd like the creation of next week's meeting to be done today. And we forget to do that. So it's hard to come in and make some annotations about what we'd like to mention next week, because the first person who decides to do it has got to do a copy pasta and put in a date, and it's all kind of just, it's distracting. And then I'm sitting there going, wait, what did I come in here for? So I'd like to just be able to automate that, and then maybe even be able to automate, these are the changes to RFCs, though I'm not sure that that's going to be easy to do, but I thought it would be fun to take a stab at it. But the main automation is just to create a new section after every meeting. And I believe that's easier to do with HackMD. I could be wrong. The other reason was because people have suggested it, because most of us are engineers and we write in Markdown really easily. Whereas formatting Google Docs is actually more, yeah.
Isn't HackMD also like implicitly open? Like you don't have to have like a G Suite account to be able to edit them.
Yeah.
And that's correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's more suitable for an open source project.
I think it will put us in line with most of our other open source projects.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, you probably need, I mean, you definitely will need some authentication to write, regardless of what platform we're talking about. But,
HackMD does support anonymous writing if you allow it.
And a lot of open
You
source
can do
projects do.
anonymous writing if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they close that down the moment they start getting spammed, but
I'm curious what projects use HackMD over Google Docs. I've seen a lot of CNCF projects use Google Docs.
I saw Notary V2 using HackMD when I was still attending those meetings last year.
What did I just attend? There was one I just attended that was using HackMD. Oh,
PGIK uses it.
Carvel does, and so does TCE, so does Antria.
TCE is where I saw it. Yeah.
I think Knative
So
and
does
Buildpacks are still
Pinniped.
using Docs. Sorry.
Pinniped, and I think Contour also is using HackMD now. I think they moved to there as well.
Got it. Thanks.
My number one complaint with Google Docs is as soon as you want to embed a bit of code, such an awful experience. Perfect up until then. If you're doing some word processing, it's great. Embed some code, not so happy.
You know, where like on the screen where it has normal text, it has like the formatting for different headings.
Yes.
My subtitle heading is a colored with a gray background, fixed width font,
Right.
so that I can just like very quickly be like, this is code.
Yep. But you still won't get that lovely automatic code coloring, right?
Oh no, nothing like that.
But
Yeah,
I understand. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we don't have to do it. I just figured it would be something to bring up. It might be nice. I'm hoping we can just automate creating new sections each month, week. I'd be a fan of that. Oh yeah, smart quotes is fun. Anyone strongly object? Groovy.
I see Stephen joined. Yeah, we already discussed some of the RFCs, but I was wondering if there's something you would like to bring in, discuss here.
Nothing in particular. My end. I think I noticed. I think Scott looked at the eventing one this morning. We talked about it a little bit too earlier. Is there anything else the team feels like they're blocked on and they need some input from TOC or anything like that? Cool.
Thank you. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss, share here? No? Right, that's it. So thanks for your time and hope to see you next week.